Hello, 3 Mandela, and welcome to your final wider curriculum lesson of the week. Today, our learning objective is, can I identify differences between the life of a Victorian child and my own? Today, we are going to learn all about what life was like for a Victorian child. Today, there is lots of information, so if you need to stop the video to have a little break and jot down any notes, then please feel free to pause the video and do this. Victorian children had very different upbringings compared to us now. In the Victorian period, depending on what kind of family you came from, affected the life you had as a child. Let's find out some more. And here we have some children from the Victorian period of time. In 1837, at the beginning of Queen Victoria's reign, only wealthy or privileged children could afford to go to school. You had to pay to go to school. Poor children went to free charity schools, all schools ran by women called dame schools. They also went to Sunday schools run by churches. However, families needed to be supported, and so poor children, even as young as 4 years old, would have to go to work to earn money. So we've got some pictures of what a Victorian classroom looked like and a picture of a child going to work in the Victorian era. What job do you think the boy did? The boy was a chimney sweep, so he had to clean all of the chimneys for the wealthy families. Let's look at the children who worked first. Children did various kinds of jobs, and many were unsafe, poorly paid, and damaging to the health. That they could work as chimney sweeps, so they went and cleaned the chimneys, domestic servants, so they worked in rich people's houses, mill workers, factory workers, farm hands, and some children even worked in coal mines. Working in the coal mine. Many children worked in coal mines. They were extremely dangerous places to work. Roofs caved in. There were sometimes gas explosions. Tunnels collapsed and workers got all sorts of injuries. There were very few safety rules. So this wasn't a very nice place for the children to go to work, and they could get hurt really easily because there weren't rules to keep them safe. Working in the factory. Many factory workers were children. They worked for long hours for very low wages and were often treated badly. Sometimes the children started work as young as 4 or 5 years of age. Their work was unsafe because there were no guards or fences around the machines to stop accidents happening. The children who worked in the factories didn't earn very much money and they weren't treated very well. And it was quite a dangerous place for them to be because there wasn't anything around the machines to keep them safe. Working in the mills. Thousands of children also worked in cotton mills. The conditions in mills were very unpleasant. Children spent most of their working hours at machines with little or no time for fresh air. Many children fell ill or had serious accidents because their hair and hands would get caught in the machines. So the mills weren't a very safe place for children to be working. And they worked long hours and had very little time to go outside to enjoy themselves. Working as chimney sweeps. Orphans and homeless children were sold to employers to become chimney sweeps. This happened because children were cheap and they could not complain. Boys were forced up through the narrow, winding passages of chimneys in large houses in order to clean them. Children suffered many cuts, grazes, and bruises on their knees, elbows, and thighs. It was a very dirty and dangerous job. Working as a domestic servant. Many girls from poor families would go to work in domestic service. This meant they would work for local landowners in their big houses or for anyone who employed servants. Servants were paid very little money. Many had unpleasant jobs to do, like cleaning out fireplaces and cleaning the kitchens. They often had to start work very early in the morning and could not go to sleep until their employers had gone to bed. So they had very long working days. They didn't get very much money and they had to do jobs like cleaning, which weren't very nice jobs for them to be doing. If you were a Victorian child, which job would you want to have and why? I want you to pause the video and explain to Mr. Fox what job you would want to have if you were a Victorian child and why you would want that job. If you need to go back to find out some more information about the jobs that Victorian children had, stop the video and rewind it so you can go over this information. In 1880, a law was made to make sure every child in Britain between the ages of 5 and 10 went to school. However, it wasn't until 1891 that schools became free. So in the Victorian era, laws started to be made to protect children and make sure that they got an education. What was school like for them? As we go through the information, have a think about how it is similar or different to school nowadays. So as you listen, think about how school is the same today and how school today is different from in the Victorian era. Children from rich families were often educated at home until they were 10 years old. So that means they had a governess come to their house to teach them. Boys were then sent to public schools like Eton or Harrow. However, very few schools had places for girls. Rich girls were usually educated at home. In the classroom, the pupils sat at desks in rows, facing the front. The windows of the schoolroom were high so that pupils could not look out. The walls would have been quite bare, but there might have been a large map of the world for you to look at. The school morning started at 9 o'clock and lasted until 12 noon. Children were sent home for lunch and then returned for afternoon classes, which were from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. There were no school lunches and sometimes no breaks. Did you know that in the Victorian era, classes were large? There would be 40 to 100 pupils in just one class. Lessons in Victorian times were mostly made up of the teacher talking and the pupils listening or copying from the board. Learning was done by rote, which means children chanted things over and over again, like the multiplication times table facts, until they knew them by heart. Children studied the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic, or maths as we know it today. Pupils would also have studied history and geography. Girls and boys often had different activities to do in the afternoon. The girls were taught cooking or sewing, and the boys might have been taught woodwork. Do you think it was fair that the girls and boys had to do different activities? There were more male teachers than female teachers in Victorian times. Children were expected to call a male teacher sir and a female teacher madam or miss. In many schools, pupil teachers helped with the teaching. These were boys and girls over 13 years old. After having been a pupil teacher for 5 years, they could become teachers themselves. Did you know that pupils were expected to be very respectful towards their teachers and had to bow, salute, or curtsy to them in the morning? Pupils in Victorian schools were punished very harshly if they misbehaved. Some reasons for punishments could be for rudeness, leaving a room without permission, not telling the truth, laziness, or missing school. Sometimes teachers used a cane. Canes were made from wood and were used to hit children. Teachers may also have used a tawse, a thick leather strap split at one end into 2 or 3 tails across children's hands or legs. In some Victorian classrooms, badly behaved children may be put in a punishment basket, which was a wicker basket raised from the ground by ropes and pulleys. Teachers may have also given children lines. This meant children would have to write the same sentence over 100 times without making a single mistake. Did you know that all punishments were recorded in the school's punishment book? And I've worked in a school where I've seen a punishment book from the Victorian era, and I found it really interesting to read some of the things that the children were punished for. Paper was expensive in the Victorian times, so children would scratch letters or numbers onto slate with a sharp slate pencil. The slates could be cleaned easily and could be used again. If you were left-handed, you were often forced to write with your right hand. So if you were left-handed, the teachers would make you put your left hand behind your back and you had to learn to write with your right hand. It doesn't sound like much fun. Now, we've got 3 different activities for you. You need to choose the activity that is just right for you to do today. Activity 1. Match these statements below to the Victorian child or the modern day child. Draw each child and write out the facts around them. So for this task, you need to draw a picture of what a Victorian child would look like and what a child today looks like. Then you need to look at the facts and decide whether it would go with a Victorian child or whether it would go with a child from today. Let's have a look at one together. I work in a coal mine. Would I put that with the Victorian child or would I put that with the child from today? Let's have a think. Do you work in a coal mine? No. So we know that one belongs to the Victorian child. Let's have a look at this one. I like to play on my Nintendo Switch. Would we write that with the Victorian child or the modern day child? Did the children in Victorian times have Nintendo Switches to play with? Yes or no? No. So we know that that statement, that fact, belongs with the modern day child. So we would write that fact next to the picture of the child from today. Let's have a look at what you could choose to do for activity 2. For activity 2, you need to create 2 mind maps. In the middle of one mind map, write my life. In the middle of the other mind map, write life of a Victorian child. In your mind maps, please include what school is like, what they or you do on a day-to-day basis. So what do you do each day? What did the Victorian children do each day? Any other important information about the life of a Victorian child that you have learnt from today's lesson. So let's just recap, because that was a lot of information there about what you've got to do. So let's break this task down. You need to make 2 mind maps. One mind map is about my life. So on that mind map, you need to write what school is like today, what you do each day, and some other facts about what it is like for a child today. On your other mind map in the middle, you need to write life of a Victorian child. Then you need to write some facts about what school was like for Victorian children, what did Victorian children do each day, and any other interesting facts that you have learnt about Victorian childhood. Your final task that you might choose to do is to create a Venn diagram to look at the similarities and differences between your life and the life of a Victorian child. A Venn diagram looks like this. You might have seen a Venn diagram before. We have 2 circles. This circle says my life. This circle says Victorian child. So in this part of this circle, we are going to write things about your life. So it could be, I have a computer at home. Then in this part of the circle, we're going to write things about Victorian children. So Victorian children might work in a coal mine. In the middle, we write things about Victorian children and you that are the same. So Victorian children and children today go to school. So in the middle, we could write go to school. Remember to take a picture of your work and upload it onto Tapestry. See you soon.